You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Infinite diversity.
Live long and prosper, and welcome to Infinite Diversity, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN Podcast Collective. I'm your host for today, Chrissie, and joining me is my co-host, Thad. Thad, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. Keep reliving different moments in my life. It's kind of weird, but other than that, I'm okay, I think.
Okay, well, you know, if you need a moment to yourself, just tell everybody that they're going to grow mushrooms in their lungs, and then I'm sure it'll clear the room.
I'm a little worried at how easily they buy that.
I would be too. I think that's a really good question to ask there. Also joining us today is Abby Sommer of the First Flight podcast. Abby, how are you doing? Welcome back. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you both for asking me to be on. Like we said before we started recording, I have been so excited to know that I get to do this with you guys, and especially this episode. So let's go.
Let's fly.
Let's fly.
Let's fly. Before we jump into our topic for the day, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons who make this show possible, particularly our associate producer, Carl Wonders. Listeners, you can hear your name listed as one of our associate producers for a monthly subscription of just $10 at patreon.com/BQN. And with a monthly Patreon subscription at any level, you can join our weekly live reaction show for Discovery called Let's Fly on Friday nights. Watch your Patreon messages for information on that and other fun opportunities to participate with your collective.
Some sad news, though, is that John Trimble, husband of Bijo Trimble, passed away this week. John and Bijo are famously known as the people who saved Star Trek. They ran the letter writing campaign to get Star Trek back on the air for a third season, which, if it hadn't happened, the show wouldn't have had enough episodes for syndication and never would have gained the cult following and later spin-offs that it did.
Yeah, we owe the Trimbles a lot. And
they're also just really cool people.
I've heard. I've never had a chance to meet, but I've heard.
I have seen them at Star Trek Las Vegas. I never interacted with them directly. I am Facebook friends with Bijo Trimble.
That's cool.
I love it.
Yeah. Every once in a while, she'll just comment on one of my photos, which is kind of cool.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Well, you know, it's one of those moments where you feel like these are just regular people. These are people like us, right? And they've had such a huge impact, and one can only hope that their love and passion for something will do that to the world. And to have so many people in the past few days since the news have came out with story after story. Not only is it thank you for what you did for Star Trek, but wow, were they amazing people? Like that just, it fills your heart. And this was one, like, you kind of know it's coming. Once people get past a certain age, it's never a surprise, you know, which is a bummer to say, but it's true. But when I saw the news, I remember it's one of those ones where you just audibly gasp and you just kind of take a step back and you're like, oh, that's a gut punch. Like that's one of us that has gone to whatever's next. And so, you know, I'm so glad that we are seeing the love and the outpour of it, because if anybody deserves it, it's those two.
Yeah. And the great thing is that they knew that the fandom loved them, because they went to events. I mean, I know there were photos from the Picard premiere last year that they were both at. So they were involved in the fandom. They knew that we all loved them, not just for what they did, but just for the people they were.
Yeah.
To be fair, Bijo still is.
Yes. Are. Yes. The people they are.
Yes. Well, we appreciate and mourn John Trimble and send our love to Bijo Trimble and, you know, all of that. So, Discovery, Face the Strange. This was fun. It was something. Abby, you're smiling already. What were your initial thoughts on this? What are your initial thoughts?
First of all, I'm a sucker for time travel episodes in general. Like, that is my flavor that I'm like, yes, bring me more, good, bad, between. If it's time travel, I am already more excited than the normal episode. And this one was just a delight. And I feel like it reminded me of other time travel episodes that I really enjoyed, yet took all those pieces to make something different. And I enjoyed it not feeling necessarily like a breather, because they didn't really get any more clues to the puzzle this week. They didn't make any forward momentum on the big story, but it doesn't feel like that because they took the time to take this episode and talk about everything else that needed to happen so they can keep going. And I really, really liked that. And this one was just fun. I found myself smiling and laughing and eye rolling, and like I felt like the emojis that you have that when you're trying to react to things when you can't talk and you have to show your thumbs up or whatever. I'm like, I did all of that in this episode. There were bits of everything. So I really like this one. It's my favorite of the season so far. I'm so glad we get to deep dive into it.
All right. Thad, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I will say it doesn't directly advance the overall plot, but it is, I think, very important for the story because it shows Raynor actually settling in and appreciating the crew and realizing how things are done in Discovery and actually accepting that. And I think that is very important. I don't know that this counts as news, and I don't want to get into too much of a conversation on this, but Alex Kurtzman did an interview this week, and Trek Twitter flipped the frick out about it, because he was asked if Star Trek would ever do, if a show would ever get to 100 episodes again, and he said probably not, because that's just not how the industry works now. And then he said in a lot of ways it's good because it means that you don't have filler episodes. And so a couple things on that. One, Alex Kurtzman, and shout out to a friend of the show, Alex Perry, for basically saying this. Alex Kurtzman works for Paramount making Star Trek. He's not going to say, "Oh, it's terrible, we can't do more episodes." That's not going to happen.
He's not stupid.
Secondly, when he says filler episodes, he's not talking about episodes like this. Right. He's not talking about, for the love of God, I saw somebody on Twitter say that In the Pale Moonlight is a filler episode. What? Yeah, people don't know what filler episodes mean.
Well, that's part of the issue, apparently. Is that one person's filler is another person's like heartfelt tribute to something. So it's an undefined word.
But also, there's a difference between a bottle episode and a filler episode. And maybe that's the problem. Because like In the Pale Moonlight is a bottle episode.
Yes.
But it's not a filler.
It is very important to the overall story, for one thing.
just a little bit. A little bit.
But yeah, it's filler episode. A filler episode would be when we've got to do an episode next week. We need to throw something together. That sort of thing. It's when they already have the outline and they have to add an episode. Fun fact, Q, the Q part of Encounter at Farpoint would constitute a filler episode.
Yes, he does.
I mean, it doesn't because Q became part of the show but at the time.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
We need another 45 minutes. Roddenberry's like, oh, let me pull another godlike figure out of my head.
But so many people got so mad about this because they thought he was saying that any episode that is not directly part of an overall story is a filler episode. And for one, that doesn't make sense if you think about it. Like, because by that definition, every episode of Strange New Worlds is a filler episode. I mean, well, not every, but you get what I'm saying. Like, if it's episodic, that's not how that works. If it's serialized, a filler episode is one where they needed to add an extra episode to pad things out. It's not when they take an episode to focus on something else because it's going to be important to them. Like, this episode is not a filler episode, and
I didn't see anybody saying it was, but I was not on Twitter
I saw
much
some people
this
saying
week.
that.
People saying that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah,
that's like a gotcha.
okay.
Hey, look, Alex Kurtzman, this episode this week is a filler episode. Like, no, that's not.
Bull. No.
Yeah, anyway.
Again, bottle episode, you're already on existing sets, but not filler.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you want to know what's funny is that the day that this all blew up on Twitter, I had a parent event in the evening. So I had a day that I didn't look at anything for like good 14 hours because I was just slammed at school, right? So I get home and I'm finally eating, seeing my family, all this. I sit down and I open it up and I'm like, oh my. And it wasn't immediately clear to me because there were two like giant things going on. Oh my God, time bugs, because that little like 60-second clip where you saw the time bug had dropped, and then there was all the rest of it about the filler. And I saw all the time bug stuff first, which tells you my algorithm knows me fairly well. And if it's going to be talking about time travel, that's what I hit first. But I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my God, why are people so upset about time bugs? Like, am I missing something? Are people thinking it's a connection I'm not realizing? Like, are we thinking time travel is a problem with Discovery? Are they not liking that it's going to be a little bit lighter? And then I see everything else and I'm like, oh, okay, good. Because I think time bugs sound cool. I was like, why is everyone so upset?
Yeah.
But then, yeah.
Yeah, but every thread about filler episodes was just annoying me more and more. When that got the
However, it was a really good time to bring out your gif of was it Isabella shooting Troy into the closet from Imaginary Friend in TNG? I saw that used more in those threads than I have probably in the entire past 5 years. So, and it's a fun gif to see over and over again.
Imaginary Friend. Okay,
talk about filler episode.
That one I would call a filler episode.
Yeah, pretty much.
That doesn't mean it's bad. It's not the best.
In that
it's
case.
Definitely filler.
Shades of Grey. That's a filler episode.
That's an oh crap. We need to do something episode.
Shades of Grey is a filler episode, and such to the point that it's not even mostly its own episode.
Yeah.
I always have thought, and I've said this before, because whenever we talk about whenever I talk about clip shows, Golden Girls was the one who did clip shows right, because they were clips of stuff we never saw.
Yeah, like Lower Decks did that.
But yes, exactly. That's, I mean, and I get like that was a thing at the time, and people did that, and it was actually a really smart send up when Golden Girls was doing that. You know, and that really confused me as a child because I thought I'd missed episodes.
That's funny.
Like I knew the ones where they were younger, like when it was like Dorothy and Sophia in the apartment in New York. I knew I hadn't missed that. But then like when they're going to like the gymnasium and Dorothy says she looks like the mother of a solid gold dancer, I'm like, I never saw that episode. When did that happen?
Well, I think it's interesting too because clip shows came out in a time that we didn't have instant access to replaying things.
And
so
that's why.
Exactly, they had a purpose, they had a reason, and now they're cliche and kitschy because we don't need to have that function of them anymore. So you can play around with the format a little bit. And I mean, tying it back to this episode of Discovery, I saw a ton of people talking about how this was the kind of clip show that Star Trek should do, and not like Shades of Grey, like actually connecting it to what we were just saying, because they were like, oh, that was the way to not do a clip show. And this one was. And I'm like, well, they weren't even all clips, which is exactly why this. Yeah.
Also, anyone who's saying that is forgetting that Star Trek did do basically this episode in the 90s. It was called Shattered, and it was an episode of Voyager.
Well, it did a lot of different.
Okay, actually, I think that was in 2000, but still.
But, you know, okay.
Technically, end of the decade.
This one was absolutely like Shattered, but it was also like Time Amok from Prodigy. It was like Crisis Point, where you're fighting each other and it's therapeutic. It's like Magic to Make the Same. I mean, we could keep going. There are so many parts of this episode that reference not just Discovery but the larger franchise. That's part of what makes it so well done and beautiful to me, is that it is commenting on itself. It's very meta, but it doesn't feel like that if you didn't know that stuff and you hadn't obsessively watched all those other episodes like I am 100% sure we have, it would still be good and fun. And that's the line that I feel that a lot of modern Trek is really doing well when they're hitting it. Like it's good Trek no matter what, but it's even better for those of us who have the deep well. And that's what this episode really felt like for me.
Yeah, I agree. It feels on it kind of like an episode of Lower Decks, you might say, because Lower Decks in the same way. You can very much enjoy Lower Decks without getting all of the references, but when you do get the references, it puts it to another level.
That's my husband and I watching Lower Decks, sitting on the couch next to each other. It's his favorite Star Trek show. Like when it got canceled, he was legit upset, like not like I was, but he felt it. He felt it because he's like, oh, that's the best one. And he doesn't, I mean, besides living around me, he picks up probably slightly more than a normal person, but he doesn't laugh at the stupid things that I'm laughing at, and he still loves it. And that's such a skill to have people write and perform that way.
I'm still sad about Lower Decks. I will continue to be, but that's okay.
I will say the show that I think did clip shows well was Stargate SG-1. They would, when they would do their clip shows, they would tie it into the story, and they would do it as like a briefing where they're showing someone out, they're reading someone else into the classified Stargate program. So they would, and there was the time they did this, and they would show a clip and like that. It works pretty well usually.
Like Riker at the beginning of part 2 of Counter at Farpoint, where you say, "Where is
like
that camera?"
That. Except
as we were talking about last week.
Except in this case, the camera there was no video screen for the people in the episode, just for us.
That makes a little more sense.
Well, and I think if we're ever going to get an episode of Discovery making fun of itself, this is it. And I mean, how many throwaway references and lines to past things that were criticisms of their plots, or high points or dramatic moments. I mean, even Michael's rolling her eyes at some of the stuff they go back to in here. So that's really fun too. And I like this season of Discovery kind of having that, we know, and we've heard you, and we got it, and look at this, we can have fun too. Like, it's been fun to have that little bit behind it. It feels like it's got a little spunk that wasn't there last season. And I love last season. Like, I love season 4, despite all the criticism. So it's just a different flavor, different moods. And I like this one.
Which makes it even all the more frustrating that they canceled the show.
Yes. I'm still not over that one too. Like,
yeah, same.
And I will hold out hope that a lot of these characters will come in other ways in other places, and that some of the surprises that have been alluded to by so many people involve characters that I am not done having time with. Because, I mean, if we don't see a Saru and Tarina wedding, I am going to be so sad, because I have spent way too much time thinking about what would happen, what would it look like, what would they wear, how would they say it. That's the kind of nerd I am. And I love Vulcan aesthetic, and I love Kelpian aesthetic. So, like, this would be everything. I would watch the romantic comedy movie of Saru and Tarina getting married. Like, yes, please. To me right now.
How do we combine the traditions of a water-based people with the traditions of a desert-based people?
Yes.
Just that alone.
Lots of plants. There'd be plants everywhere. It would be amazing.
Yes. Oh, yes. I am expecting to see their wedding this season.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't imagine that they wouldn't have it.
If we don't, I will be forever hoping for the movie, because I need this. There's not many things that I really feel like I need, but that is one of them. I am so happy to feel Doug Jones would not lead me on if there was not a happy ending to this story. And he has said that he was thrilled and happy and content with where it is. So I'm going to assume that this beautiful, mature relationship, which has just really risen in my shipping rankings, is going to come to a pleasant and just as lovely ending as it has been the entire time.
Yeah. I really... This is funny, since there's none of this in this episode.
There's like 3 seconds of Saru in this episode, and I need more Saru all the time.
Yeah.
Please.
This is true. No, but I just love how you have 2 people who have proven themselves to be very competent, very capable, They are adults in every part of their life, and they still trip over dealing with interpersonal relationships. And I think that's a super important thing to show.
Yeah.
Because particularly our generation, there's this idea of like, okay, once you hit adulthood, you can figure out everything. You're not going to screw things up unless there's something wrong with you,
Well, I mean, there is something
we were
wrong with me, sure, but...
Well, there's something wrong with all of us. I mean, look at what we're doing on a Saturday night, really. So...
I would say that means there's something right with us.
I think we've found our people, is what I'll say. We have found our tribe.
Yeah. All right. That's true. I was never want to be out on a Saturday night anyway.
I have to say, I do have a sushi date with my older daughter and my husband when we're done with this. So that's
I love it.
That's my big Saturday night.
Yeah, and that's a good one.
Yeah,
I loved this episode. My only real complaint with it at all is that I think it should have had more cameos than just Arium.
Okay, so I've thought a lot about this in the past couple of days. Like, I might have been thinking about this last night when I should have been asleep, right? So, because I watched it right before I went to sleep.
Glad I'm not the only one.
No, and I was hoping, and once we figured out that this was going to be temporal and with discovery-based temporal, I was like, oh, there's so many people it could be, and I am dying for Lorca, and don't you reference him again if you're not going to give me some Lorca somewhere.
I know, right?
But if it wasn't Lorca, I think that these were the ones that we wanted. Having Bryce and Arium, these were the family. This was like our crew. Yeah. These were the ones that were going to fit most with that theme of we did this together, we came together, all of that. And I feel like when it was right before they said Arium, I did that breath of Arium, like the inhale, and said it as I was doing it. And it felt right to me. It felt like that was exactly what I wanted to see.
Arium was excellent in this. Yeah, I agree.
Even having brought back like Laurel or Ash or Cornwell, and I love Cornwell. Like every time I rewatch the series, I love her more. It wouldn't have been the same because this was about our Discovery family. So it really was. And even Lorca, then when you think about it, he was never really part of the family. Like he's the evil uncle that, is off doing something weird in the garage. But these were the perfect people. It would have, the story of Discovery and it being a family would have been outshone by a different cameo, and it would have just changed that trajectory. And I like the feeling that it was the us of it, and so I enjoyed that, and I'm okay with it not being anybody. But man, Lorca.
So I don't think they should have added people to the resolution timeline where Michael talks to the crew on the bridge and Arium, etc. I don't think they should have added to that. I don't think we should have gotten more crew in that scene, but I think we should have gotten in some of the other time jumps, perhaps gotten, I don't know, like Pike there or
someone
Lorca,
who's actually in the area and on the set that they can go grab.
Yeah.
Or hey, have Landry show up and die a fourth time.
Yeah.
I think there were all sorts of opportunities for cameos that we could have gotten.
It occurred to me afterward, and this is something that would have been completely unnecessary, but it would have been hilarious if they had just had a quick blip in the middle where they drop into the middle of Make the Saints Man Go Mad.
A loop and a
and
loop.
You have a moment of, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Why is this happening? And then blip, they're gone, But
that would be funny.
That would have been funny, but totally unnecessary.
I do like that they did that, like, magic to make the Saints Man Go Mad is an important plot point here with the whole Stamets being separate from the time stream, though.
That's one of my favorite little back and forths. And that's what I was, when I'm talking about the tone of Discovery having that lightness behind it, that's the perfect example, because it was exposition, but it was done in a way that had humor, but it was in-universe humor, and they didn't dwell. They kept going. And the look between Burnham and Raynor when she's like, oh yeah, it's because of his tardigrade DNA. He lives outside the time stream, and he's like, what? And he's read the crew files. So like for that to be surprising it was just fun. And they just acknowledge it and keep going. And that's kind of in time travel episodes, there's always got to be a few moments of that too. The hand waving of yeah, okay, we're just gonna acknowledge it and move on thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have one of those later that I'm kind of irked about, but then we'll get to that.
Okay. I also have one. We might have the same one.
We might. Knowing your usual areas of interest, it may very well be the same one.
Oh, that too. I have two.
All right. Well, let's move forward here, and we'll get.
I don't think my irk is going to be the same as your guys' irk. Just saying.
Good. Then we all have different irks, and we can talk about them. Okay. So we start the episode with just a little piece of information that gives us how we got to where we were, and that is Maul and Locke getting the little bug from the guy who looks like he has the ancestry of half of the, species in Star Trek in him. Which I love how they've been doing that, because that really is how things would be with everybody interconnected.
Isn't he the species from Nightingale in Voyager?
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I remember Nightingale, but I don't picture what the aliens look like.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't either off the top of my head. I'm not that big of a nerd, but I saw somebody somewhere going, oh no, it was this alien that was from, and I was like, oh, I need to go back and take a look at that so I can, and I never did, but I believe it.
Okay.
It was probably Jurg, because that man knows everything and does a gift to the universe, but putting out something about this is the species that it was. Oh, Thad's doing his deep data digging. I can see the eyeballs going.
Yep. Well, I thought he had a little bit of Cardassian look to him. He might have had a little bit of Jem'Hadar look to him. He was very much on the reptilian side of the Trek world, but maybe he was just one species and I wasn't.
Well, I'll just say that this is one of the first moments of this episode where you go, oh, hair and makeup deserves every award that they can get for this episode.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Like for both the humanoids and the non-humanoids, the makeup and the hair in this, like it was so impeccable and so well done. And I love cool alien makeup, and this is cool alien makeup.
Yeah.
Watch me be completely wrong about this alien, by the way, Thad.
Maybe, but like he's got a lot more going on his face than those aliens in Nightingale do. So I don't think so. Like, they don't have anything happening on their foreheads, for instance. And he's got all sorts of weird stuff going on in his forehead.
Well, I don't know. That was just, I had seen that somewhere and I meant to look it up, so didn't mean for it to be this exact moment. But
all I remember from Nightingale is laughing my head off at the scene when Harry Kim tells Janeway that if Voyager had been in the Alpha Quadrant, he'd be a lieutenant commander by now.
Yeah, well.
Which is like, no, wow, Harry. Way to, like... you clearly have a high opinion of yourself.
Ask for more than you want. Always ask for more than you want. You gotta negotiate down.
Oh, Harry.
Oh,
poor Harry.
Yes. So, yeah, poor Harry. Right. So the guy tries to double cross him, and they kill him with some poison in a very appropriate way, because it's something apparently he used to sell to the Emerald Chain.
And they had apparently already poisoned him before he double-crossed them.
I got the impression it was on the bag.
I thought it was on the actual platinum.
Open the bag.
Right. So he was going to open the bag regardless.
Right. So they put the poison in the bag, and then it...
So that's what I meant, is even if he hadn't double-crossed him, they still were poisoning him, is what I'm getting at.
Gotcha. Either way, yes. Yes, they walked into it planning to poison him. Yeah. And I do. It's a morbid bit of humor, but when he tries to grab Locke's leg and he kind of just kicks him away, and they continue with their conversation. It was very.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, they're an interesting duo, because you can see that Locke is feeling differently about this all than Maul, and it just. I wonder where this is going to go, and I have a feeling we're getting a lot more backstory on both of them, and that some of this backstory is going to be really interesting. And I've heard people say, oh, by the end of this, she's going to be Cleveland Booker the Fifth, and Locke is going to have opened up a portal to the mirror universe, because that's where he came from, because that's where the Breen are succeeding. And I'm like, oh my god, okay, some of you people, that's some theories. But I like the fact that you're seeing them as not just cartoonish bad guys. They're a well fleshed out duo, and they're not necessarily bad guys. You know, they're out for themselves. They have a different goal in mind. Are they going to kill people along the way? Obviously, we know they do. Fred better come back. I'm really sad about that. But
yeah, me
well,
too.
you know, he's laying in a storage drawer somewhere, I'm assuming, right? We know those guys come back, but I like them. I like
take him over to Daystrom.
Exactly. I like Mullenlock. I like that we got a bit of them in here. I like that we see that they're smart. They do their research. They're just as smart as our crew. They're a worthy adversary, and that is fun to have around.
And I don't think this was mentioned before. I think this is new information that they're trying to outrun a bounty. That's why they want the tech.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we knew that before.
Yeah, so that actually is pushing the story along a bit. Just in that we didn't know that before. So, and the first time I watched the episode, I didn't catch that they were getting the bug from the guy, and I thought they had the clue, and I was waiting for it to show up. And then the next time I watched it, I was like, oh wait, that's the bug.
It was in a really cool little slidey case.
That makes more sense.
Though. I mean, that was a neat prop.
It's better than an Altoids box.
Or the pencil case that likes to show up. You know, we're collecting our rock samples in the pencil case. So that's the one that always pulls me out because I see those every day. It's cool. Like, that's a pencil case. You got those 2 for $1 at Walgreens. Thanks.
Hey, if it works, it works.
That's true.
I'm impressed they're that cheap, even at Walgreens.
Yeah. No, if you can turn a salt shaker into a medical instrument, then you can do anything.
Very true. Well, and I have to call out the makeup here again, too. Locke's makeup is so neat. And we got some really detailed, like, side shots when they were going in for the kiss. It was interesting to see, like, the ridges and the divots. And it seemed, I was noticing since the first time, when Maul's putting her hand down the side of his head, it seems like the creases of her fingers fit perfectly in his little, like, head side creases, and I'm like, I don't know if that was intentional or not.
That.
It's really neat when you look at it. It's like she settles right in, and I'm like, I wonder if that obviously is not going to be a plot point, but I wonder if that's like an Umoxy thing. You know, it's something for the species, and because it just seemed very intimate. And I liked that because I believe the chemistry between them. I believe that they care about each other over anything else, and that is interesting too, because if any crew understands like deep obsessive feelings about one other individual, I think it might be the Discovery crew. So
yeah,
you know, they're going to get the emotional stuff that goes with these two, and that I am assuming is coming out over the next 6 episodes.
Right. Okay. So we get to the coordinates that they were supposed to go to that they got from the information on Trill. They appear to be empty. The Discovery crew are making suggestions. Rayner shuts them all down by being Rayner. And then he gets pulled into the office and she chews him out for it, rightly so.
I loved the like little one eyebrow subtle look that she gives after he has his moment right before she says, you know, come to my room. I'm like, I give that look. Like I know that look. I give that look to students and my own children that like, seriously, come on, we're going to have a little chat right now. And I love that she pulled him aside. And at first I was like, why are they beaming to the ready room? Seriously? But I understand now, like later plot, they were going to have to beam out. It needed to be the first instinct. But yeah, that I loved that look. Her face acting in this episode.
Yeah.
Whew, and that's one of the first moments to see it.
I have commented before that I'm annoyed at how much they use the transporters, but it was in fact important to the plot in this episode.
Yes. They use them too much, and we have no idea how it understands where to send them. And I guess we'll find.
Also,
that's fine.
Like, if you never walk anywhere and you have a machine that can make literally any food, how are you so skinny?
Well, we know Book
because
works
the
out.
Machine that can make literally any food can make it as nutritionally valuable. You can have a bowl of ice cream
that's like eating steamed kale.
Is actually nutritionally valuable. Yeah.
I know, right?
I want one of
Mountain
those.
of like
yeah,
Twinkies,
me too.
the least healthy food on the planet could be like, you know, chowing down on vegetable soup fresh from the garden.
Nice.
Yep.
I want
Yep.
one of those too.
But I agree. Even so, you got muscle atrophy, you have other issues.
Yeah, like,
but
just walking to and fro from room to room is, in fact, very good for you.
Mm-hmm.
I can fix this because it avoids the awkward walk. If you're about to get chewed out and you got to spend 5 minutes walking behind a person to get to the office before you get chewed out. Actually, as the person who's doing the chewing out, that's kind of a good thing, but
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But that's the only pass I'm giving on that one. So yeah. So we get over the course of the episode that he's definitely working within the context of the traumas that he's dealt with, because he's got the burn. He lived through the burn. He grew up during the burn.
He lost his family
and that's
early.
the only way he
we
knows how to
find out.
function.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
He says he lost his family young. Now, he says it to Burnham, so I assume that means that he lost the family he was born to when he was a child.
That's
But
what I
I'm
assume
wondering
as well.
but I'm wondering if he lost a family later too. You know, because it just seems like he's too separated from everybody. But I might be reading too much
Well,
into
and we
that.
don't know a lot about his species and how they interact and what family means to them. I mean, I think about so when I hear things like this, sometimes I think about like denobulans, right? And how they have these gigantic families. And if somebody
Mhm.
dies, there's like, I don't know, 740 some people who have a family member who just died, right? So we have no idea what that means. Like, did he have a colony wiped out? Did he have, was it a shuttle accident? I mean, there's a lot of tragic backstories in Trek, and so I think it's an interesting
Mhm.
piece. I would like to know more because I think it is foundational to who he is. But you know what? If you're going to be working through your problems that from previous trauma, again, this is the crew who's going to get it. So
The place to do it.
we've got
Mhm.
a few traumas they've lived through, and they deal with it. So this is the time to do it. I want him and Hugh to start hanging out and having their make mandalas or drink punch or ring gongs or whatever it would be that that would help him. But I think that would be an interesting relationship because we see him in this episode connecting with Stamets, like even calling him Paul at one point. It would not be non-discovery like to see them become friends, and 3 older males who have come from different times, had big changes, been through trauma. That could be a really interesting relationship.
He mentions that he's called themselves old dogs. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, who gave Raynor the old school folksy sayings from Earth from like the 1950s and 60s? Because he whips them out all the time. And I'm like, I don't know who gave him that, but he obviously studied them, or it was what served under somebody who used a lot of them, because he's got some phrases in there.
Yeah.
Well, we were thinking that he was maybe Vance's first officer at some point, or served under him. So I could see Vance having folksy Earth things for sure.
That's true. That's true. I like that idea.
But yeah, I don't know. What it reminded me of, and we'll call it Chrissie's History Corner or whatever, but it reminded me of people who lived through the Depression, and who can't get rid of stuff, or people who grew up in desperate poverty and are now not in poverty and can't get rid of stuff because of that, or don't trust banks or something. I mean, that's not directly relatable here, but that mindset of you always have to be prepared for anything. I think he's got a lot of trauma that he doesn't even realize he has. Like a lot of people.
Well, I think it's the difference between growing up in like a scarcity mindset and like a broadening mindset, right? Like he grew up where there was never enough of anything. You always had to be scrappy. You were always on alert, like that kind of that feeling. That's what his instincts are, because that's what he needed to survive, as opposed to coming back from when Starfleet was idealistic, and even after the Klingon War. I mean, you see they have a different focus. They want to go out, they want to meet people, they want to. Their resources are out there, new people are out there. We're about exploration and science. It's a different kind of mindset, and it's interesting for them to each see the benefits of each other's by the end of this. And that, we were saying before, this is getting that relationship under control. They've taken a season's worth of growth and thrown it all into this episode so that we can say, yeah, we understand how they get to the point that they get to, because they had it smacked upside the head with, this is why they're right and this is why you're right, and we need to come together somewhere in the middle.
So they're having this conversation, then all of a sudden there's flashing lights. And hey, I appreciated that they had a little note at the beginning about the flashing
that was
lights.
nice.
That was interesting.
I thought that too.
Yeah. It reminded me of the old Nintendo games. This game has flashing lights, yes. So then they jump, and all of a sudden they're in this wormhole between the 23rd and 31st centuries, and they're trying to figure everything out. And I think we don't actually see Saru at all, do we?
No, we
just hear him in that one moment.
We just hear his command that he gave to the whole ship, which I'm pretty sure they didn't even get him re-recorded. I think they just took that line from the second episode of season 3, whose name I just slipped out of my head, but it's okay. Was that episode?
Yeah.
It's the one where they crash the planet with the
parasitic ice.
The ice. Yeah.
I have a really hard time with Discovery titles because I don't see them every time. And
they don't.
Right.
It hasn't. The ones that are only a couple years old. I mean, I rewatch with more frequency than the average human being, but I still. It hasn't had the long-term brain functionality yet, where for 30 years I've been calling it this, so of course I know what it is. So yeah, parasitic ice at Zara gets his hand eaten off later.
It is Far From Home.
Yeah, look, we all got it at once.
I looked it up.
So did I.
I was going through them in my head, so look at that. We are in sync.
All right. So they have that jump. Oh no, this is fine. This is fine. I'm not going to edit out us looking for the episode because that's par for the course with us.
I remember enough Star Trek trivia without looking it up for nerd cred, so it's fine.
You kicked so much butt on Trexperts.
Recently proved that. Oh man,
yes. I was listening to that episode and I was just like, yes, go Thad. Yes, I knew you were going to represent. I was so proud of you. And when you were arguing points, I'm like, see, I thought the same thing. So bravo to you.
I think Davey was definitely getting annoyed at how many times I would answer with, well, the answer you want is this, but technically.
But you were right. I appreciated that.
Because, especially First Contact with the Endopresians, they could not have possibly called themselves the Endopresians at the moment of First Contact.
Yep.
I love your logic and thought process because they are oftentimes in line with mine. So I very much appreciate. I feel very seen when you answer questions like that.
Oh yes. All right. Well, listeners, if you have not heard Thad on Trexperts Quiz, go do that.
Or honestly, just listen to Trexperts Quiz in general. It's a lot of fun.
Well, in general, yes. You can avoid the ones that I'm on because I walk in with a lot of hubris and then I get my ass handed to me and then I do it again. So, yeah.
I enjoyed the one where you sang So Six Rhapsody. That was good.
That was fun. That was a fun one. And I think I only lost that by 1 point, so I can't complain too much. But
yeah. I'm just excited when I hear you are going to be on there because I'm like, oh, look, it's my friend. It's fun like that.
Aw. We got to get you on there.
I don't know. I get really nervous when stuff like that. I know it and I'd probably be all right, but we'll see. Timing is hard on those ones when they record too for me.
Yeah, because he's in Australia and it's
yeah.
But I've thought about it and I sure have yelled out answers in the shower or the car or wherever I'm listening. So
Right. So they figure out they're in this wormhole and then they basically have enough time to look on the bridge. That's how they figure out where they are. That's how she figures out where they are.
Oh no, I'm sorry. We do see Saru.
Yeah, he's laying down. You see him.
We see him lying
in his boots. Okay. He's unconscious, but that's
okay.
But that also was probably a shot from
old footage.
Far From Home.
Well, you can see that with Tilly's hair in that one. I don't think that they and just seeing Mary Wiseman, I'm pretty sure that was reused footage. Oh. Her hair has changed beautifully throughout the seasons. I love her hair. I wish I had hair that did half the things hers did. And I like it because she's the character that I can look at and know exactly like where we are in what season progression. Like it
I wish I had hair.
Well, yeah. Sorry. I don't mean to make you envious, but she's got the best hair. And it's hair that looks beautiful, even splayed out in a disaster, right? Like it's the beautiful hair. And that's how you know it's her. It's like, Tilly, no. She's got great hair this whole episode. She's got her little bun back from like early on. I loved it. I loved it.
I like that better than what she's got going on now, but we've already had that conversation.
Yeah, so. I agree. I really liked the season 1 bun. That's probably my favorite Tilly hairstyle.
I don't know. If I had enough hair to have big, glorious, curly, bouncy hair, I would show it off too. Like I have terrible hair. Like it's glorious. It's glorious.
I don't know. I guess I feel like I don't know. Less. I feel like less is more with hair.
You would no. Sorry, it's too easy.
Like I don't hate anyone's hairstyle in any of the seasons, but like. I like because in season 1, Burnham and Tilly both have like very much smaller hair than they do in later seasons.
Yeah,
and I like it.
I can see what you're saying there.
I feel
I certainly go with the less is more because I cut all of mine off. So
well, mine doesn't do much of anything. It just kind of lives and does whatever. But I feel like I appreciate how hair with the characters has grown and changed as they have, and like like when you think about Tilly, she was so much more restrained and pulled back, and her first season hair was the hair of somebody who's anxious and wants to make sure that they are presentable and okay, and it's easy and utilitarian because she needs to be up and ready to go. And now she's bigger, she's bolder, she's more herself. She's grown into the copious amounts of curls. So. I just think it's interesting, and I appreciate, like I said, the hair and the makeup in this episode, astounding, and the amount of detail. Like even Reno and Stamets' hair is different in the different time jumps. Like just the amount of gel or which way they were combing it. Like that's the kind of detail that makes me go, "Oh, this is made by people who care." And it's the hair.
So which is your favorite Janeway hairstyle, Abby?
That's hard. None of the buns. Probably the short bob, because I think it's the most like what I imagine her actually taking care of. Like it's feminine enough, but it's not going to get in the way. But I think back to I really liked when she had it long and down, like in the early seasons, like in Time and Again, when they're wearing the candy corn and she's got the beautiful auburn hair down the back. That's gorgeous. Oh.
I agree. That looked good. I like when she has the ponytail with the like I don't know
twisties?
What you call the hair. Yeah,
yeah.
I just think of how long it takes to comb and brush long hair, and I feel like she's the woman in the shower who's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to run a comb through it, and we're good. Oh, that's kind of my routine.
Well, I wonder if the fact that they have sonic showers makes doing the hair easier because it doesn't get wet.
See, sometimes you want it wet because if it dries in a certain... When I do my daughter's hair for like recital and stuff and it's got to be pulled back, I make it wet as it dries that way and then it stays that way. So I oftentimes think, do you really ever get back to like neutral, just plain hair without it getting wet? It's my feeling with dry shampoo in general.
Yeah, but it's different.
I've never used dry shampoo.
I never have either.
I don't want to because I have that feeling like, how does that work? Are we just covering up the yuck?
I mean, I have never had long enough hair that I am doing anything other than just going in the shower and putting it under the water.
All right. Anyway,
Like, I mean, I've had longer hair, but like, it was never like
copious lot.
it was
You
never
didn't- you
what one would
didn't,
describe as long hair. Like, it never went to my shoulders, even. I mean,
No Gavin Rossdale phase for you?
I love that
Like
you
so
went to
many
Gavin
of the men of
Rossdale
our
because I
generation.
thought
The lead singer-
Fabio.
I don't know who Gavin Rossdale is. I do know who Fabio is.
Gavin Rossdale was the lead
Gavin
singer
Rossdale-
from Bush in the 90s.
Yes.
I
And
don't
Gwen
know
Stefani's
Bush.
ex-husband.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't...
Okay, I picture him when you say Gwen Stefani.
Nice. Yeah. He had good hair. He had
I
good
bet-
90s
yeah.
hair.
Okay.
I bet it's
Yeah,
like that.
oh God, he
it's
was
bet
gorgeous.
It's like that band you mentioned last time, where once you
Tonic.
sent me a link, I did. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew when you said you didn't know who they were. I'm like, you're
Everybody
crazy.
knows that
I-
one
I
song.
know.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah,
what's
and it's so
Bush's famous song?
They had a lot of them. What
The one,
things?
their first big
Album
their
was
first big
16
one
Stone.
that had a 16 Stone was the first big album, but the first big song was Swallowed. And yes, you're giggling, and that's exactly why it became such a big song, I think. But Little Things, Machine Head was in what
Yeah.
movie was that in?
You
that was the other
probably
big
know it if
one.
you heard it then.
These are probably songs that I would know
Glycerine.
if I heard them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glycerine, yeah. That's the one that they replay on all the like 90s hours on the radio if you ever do those.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there's 90s music on classic rock stations now.
I know.
We're old.
Because 30 years ago, when it was the 90s, 60s music was on classic rock stations, and that was the same amount of time.
Right.
Yeah, but I can't. I don't grasp the concept the 90s were 30 years ago. That sounds
I know.
like a lie.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like, Gavin Rossdale is almost 60. What? He
Ugh.
has a granddaughter. Gavin Rossdale's grandchildren. It's like, anyway.
All right. So
It's like when
Discovery.
I watch a movie and it's a period
Yeah.
piece and it's set in a time period that I remember, and it's like, no, that doesn't. What? No.
I finished up all the lectures over the last week, and I ended Michigan history in the 70s. And they're like, well, where's the rest of it? And I'm like, I haven't written it yet because I lived through it. It's not history yet.
Well, I mean,
Anyway.
it was kind of a downward trend after the 70s anyway, wasn't it?
Here and there. Yeah. And you kind of get a little blip, and then there's the Flint water crisis, and it's just a mess. Talk about living through that. That hasn't even been a decade. Anyway. Say, there's a lot of stuff for the end of the episode now. Cool. So
None of it about Laura Ingalls Wilder.
I don't know
She
how
was
I'm sitting
also
here
in the
going,
past.
How?
I honestly have been thinking for the
There's
past few days,
something.
how am I going to get this connected? And I'm having a really hard time this episode. I was hoping it would come out naturally in the discussion.
Hair. She cut her bangs.
Yeah.
She needed that lunatic fringe, right?
In that forward time period, Zora should have been watching an episode of Laura Ingalls of Little House on the Prairie.
That would have
Like
been
the
good.
classics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
that owned by the
I
same-
just did,
I don't know who
did this
owns
to
it.
myself. I have the theme to Little House on the Prairie stuck in my head now.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Right. So,
So they go
What-
both
do we
forward
learn
and
anything else?
backward
They
in
jump.
time.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, okay. So they go back, and it's the jump where they're in between the two time periods, which I think is a very interesting
Mhm.
thing in itself. And then they jump back further, and they're in dry dock in San Francisco.
The
So,
bridge.
I love this because it's a reference to
Yeah.
TOS. Because
Okay.
the dedication plaque of the original Enterprise says that it was made in San Francisco.
Okay.
So that's where that comes from. Also,
Okay.
I think it's funny. It would have sucked literally if it had been built in space because there wasn't a window there yet.
That is a really
Now
good
that's
point.
a point.
It's a very good point.
That has always bothered me since the 2009 movie when they're building the Enterprise in the middle of the field in Iowa, and I'm just like, how are they getting that off the ground?
Well,
How?
okay, but at
I mean,
the
I know
end-
how. I know they do,
Yeah.
but no.
But they're building the at the end of Prodigy in Supernova Part 2. They're
Mhm,
building ships down there in San Francisco as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not unprecedented. It was just, yes, you're right, that incredibly lucky. Just like it's incredibly lucky when they jump into the future with Zora and everybody's been dead for decades that she's still keeping life support on. I mean, it looks real cold on those icy
Yeah.
windows. So, like, good thing they didn't jump
Yeah.
in and, like, immediately suffocate because she obviously wasn't paying attention. So, you know, this is one of those times.
Well, maybe
time
that
jump
guy
hand
just
waving
left.
thing.
They probably have their programmable matter environmental suits ready to go
yeah.
anyway.
That's true, and they should still work at as long as Zora's functioning enough. No.
So I want to know.
Well, they use their little
thingies.
hollow thingies.
I
I love
wanna
how we all
know-
just brought our fingers up and like we could make them
Yeah.
appear in front of us. Like, oh yeah, here comes my comm badge.
I want to know what Stamets' consciousness was doing during this past period, and also during the forward period when he's dead.
I thought that too. Yeah. Does
Ooh,
Stamets
that
wake up
is interesting.
somewhere on like a previous ship? Because that's where he was in that time. Like, yeah, it's very
Like, I
interesting.
wouldn't think so, because it wouldn't be part of the bubble, but
That's what I would
Maybe?
think too.
Yeah. Well, no, because he ended up in sick bay,
mhm.
so he just inhabits wherever his body was.
Right, but that's inside Discovery. Still.
Right. Well, so
Yeah, like,
these
I don't
other
know
ones,
if
I don't.
how this would work, whether he could be wherever he was before Discovery was built.
Or if he could be
Maybe.
wherever he ended up. Like, obviously there weren't bodies laying around all over on Discovery, so the crew died, but it was somewhere
Is he like?
else?
Does he wake up inside a coffin? I mean,
Does he
Ooh.
wake up on a floating piece of HQ if they were all over at HQ, like, and when it got
Yeah.
blown up? I mean,
but what if he was cremated and,
there's
his
nothing-
ashes spread across
Oh.
space? I mean,
Even so, if it was decades previous, it's probably there's disintegration there. It's not.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's not think about that.
Hand wave,
Uh,
timey-wimey
Too
kind of
late.
stuff, right? This is one of those moments where, like, don't think too hard.
Ephraim comes around and is like, "Hey, you don't want to see this part. We'll hang out for a little bit, and then you go back."
He's hanging with the koala on the Black Mountain.
There we go. I love the guy who's just got his headphones in and he's doing his thing.
I'm
and-
glad earbuds are still around so far into the future. Like, I have an earbud
Yeah.
in
Why
a lot
not?
of the time, so I appreciate that.
I will take this opportunity to say that whoever handles marketing and merchandising type things,
Mhm.
why can't I buy Bluetooth headphones that look like Uhura's earpiece?
That would be so cool.
Why? Make that happen. Okay.
Anovos actually made Spock earbuds.
That's cool. Did they actually work?
Yeah, they had I actually owned them. They were terrible. But
Well, it's more for the look than how good the,
well, they were uncomfortable.
the
But yeah,
sound is. Oh, okay. All right.
so like it had like the Vulcan ear part that went on top, and then it was connected to like a earbud that also went in.
Were they
In your ear.
adjustable? As someone who's bought multiple pairs
No.
of Vulcan ears and they don't fit or stay on my tiny ears,
Never.
wonders.
They were not adjustable,
All right, well-
and they were not comfortable,
All right.
and they cost like $50 or something.
Ew.
And that's part of the reason why Anovos no longer exists.
Yeah. Cool as that is, does not make as much sense as creating earbuds that look like a literal earbud with an extra piece. But
Yep.
anybody want
I
to
feel like
hire me to
that
do
would
merchandising?
be
I
really
can do that.
heavy, though, wouldn't it?
Well, you could do it with a light piece of plastic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, I guess.
You wouldn't have to. You could.
I'd be concerned
yeah.
about it staying in if you're doing any sort of doing anything other than sitting at a desk.
Well, yeah,
Depends
you're
how you brace
probably
it,
right.
like-
It's not something I.
Yeah.
It's not for mowing the lawn.
Well, no, you'd want something noise canceling for that anyway.
Yes. Well, the little earbuds are noise canceling anymore anyway. So, yeah, earbuds still a thing.
And more good face.
Appear to be larger than they are now, but that's all right. More good face acting, yes.
I mean, Sonequa in this episode, her face acting is on par with anyone else in any other episode, says the person who loves to pause an Enterprise all the time. She has so many micro expressions in this episode, and so many times that, like, what her face is doing doesn't match what her eyes are showing, and that is such a powerful thing, and I love it. But when she's trying to tell Rainer, like, there's a guy over there, and then afterwards when he says the stupid, what is it, fail to prepare is preparing to fail kind of thing, and she's like, oh, that was lovely. Like, it's just, it's nice to see those barbs are already starting. They're in an uncomfortable situation, and they're both using the humor to get through it, and that's a nice little point of connection that I hope continues in their relationship.
Yeah. Right. So then we blip again, and we are in the battle with Control, and
that was a rough one.
This sucked for Stamets.
Poor guy.
I forgot how much this hurt. That's fantastic. I just right.
I forgot how bad this hurts. You've been impaled.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? If we're only going to get a little bit of Hugh in this episode, this is a beautiful moment, because this is a moment that when you watch it in the original episode, you feel it every time. This is when Hugh is choosing to stay. This is that moment of deep connection and love between them, and you still see that. Like, even this is Stamets not caring about that right now because he's caring about the time bug, but which, by the way, is way too loud to be effective as a stealth device, but that's a whole other ball of wax. I loved that we got to see Hugh at this moment, just having that powerful connection again. And he is doing everything he can to save someone that he loves so deeply. And I just, Wilson Cruz's face again, like, he's so expressive as well. I loved seeing the emotions of so many different characters in this one, because we got to jump right into the juicy parts, and it was nice to see. And he pulled it right out. I mean, it's been years since he did that, but it felt like that's exactly how it would have gone in that timeline if this had been how it went.
Yep. It was beautifully done. I love that we get the Krenim reference, because of course they would have been all over the Temporal Wars, and that never occurred to me until now.
Yep, that makes sense.
Fantastic. Yes. And that of course they would make something this diabolical, to use a cartoonish word, but still accurate.
Well, I love every time we connect into the Temporal Wars. I mean, this is no surprise to anyone who's ever listened to me talk Star Trek, but that is the plot thread I want most. Well, besides the wedding, this is the other one that I just, give me the Temporal Wars. Give me the Temporal Wars. I want to see what happens. I want to see who the players were. I want to see what the ripples were. I want to see the good outcomes, the bad outcomes. I think it is such an unmined.
I want to see Scott Bakula.
Yes. I want to know who Future Guy was. Like, there are so many possibilities that are good now, and they could be somebody that we totally don't even know yet. But I love when they reference stuff like that. And the Krenim being part of the Temporal Wars makes so much sense. And later on when we get to another part, I have more to say on the Krenim device, but we'll save that for later.
I think Kovich is Future Guy now.
Yeah, I think so.
I've kind of worked that in, but
I like that idea. I also like it being Georgiou with just, a filter on. I think that would be really interesting.
True.
And that could open up a lot of possibilities as well of, which universe Georgiou is it, and that's interesting as well.
Yeah. Speaking of Georgiou, this was something, I can't remember if I mentioned this in our group chat or not, Chrissy. IMDb lists one of the actors in Section 31 is playing a Vaudouar.
Ooh.
I saw that mentioned. That might have been in our chat. I don't remember.
That's interesting.
Refresh my memory about the Vaudouar. I'm sorry.
The Vaudouar
Bad Trek
were from the Voyager episode Dragon's Teeth. They're the people that had the subspace corridors that went all over the galaxy, and then had tried to use them to conquer everyone, and had eventually been eventually the people they conquered fought back, and they had saved themselves in suspended animation.
Interesting fact, that is the last episide of Voyager that I had to see to make it a complete watch, because it had been preempted and pushed back 1,000 times. And then, I finally got to it, and people were like, this one is so good. And they built it up, and I was like, it's never going to live up to it. And it's a good episode. It is not as good as people.
It's a decent episode, but I can see how.
It didn't feel like it should have been the last one I watched. Like, this was not the best finale. It was fine. But interesting.
No, that should have been Endgame, but yeah.
But it was interesting.
Sorry.
Also,
Too easy.
Just think that, because
It
that's
was,
a lot of time stuff that they can do there too, with the corridors, space and time. Yeah.
Dragon's Teeth, I think, is a decent episode, but it in and of itself was sort of a rehash of a previous Voyager episode, because it reminded me a lot of Alliances.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is the one with the Trabe.
That I will never think of that episode without thinking of the fanfare that was put on.
That the Amazon Prime
The
put
Amazon
into those
Prime
episodes for some
fanfare.
reason.
Yes, that was fantastic. Anyways,
I don't know about that. I like the idea of section. No, I don't know about that because I never watched it on Prime. So
okay, so you know the episode Alliances.
I'm vaguely familiar with it. I think
it's the one.
Voyager is the one I've seen the least.
All the Kazon come together to try to, make a.
And Voyager tries to make
yes.
Tries to deal with the Trabe, who were the people that the Kazon had overthrown, and then it turned out that they had actually been terrible people who had been enslaving the Kazon.
Yeah.
Anyway, and they were planning to murder all the Kazon in this
giant
conference.
Meeting. Yep.
So, for whatever reason, the version of the episode that went on Amazon Prime, they added a sound effect to it. So that, like, when they were at the conference, whenever a Kazon
was announced,
the Maj of each sect showed up, it played a trumpet and made made applause sounds.
Crowd cheering noises. Yeah. It was so funny. It felt like somebody's homemade blooper reel kind of silly joke, but it was for real there. It's not anymore. Look it up on YouTube. It's worth it. It's funny.
Oh,
it was not part of the original episode.
No. So what I'm getting from this information is that they can do that, but they can't manage to put the little Star Trek opener on all of the episodes of all the old series on Paramount. That's what I'm getting out of this. Yeah.
And at the very least, they could do it on the old episodes of Discovery.
Yeah.
And Lower Decks, and
Yeah.
Yep. The stuff that they already have it for. I mean, okay, anyway.
They don't even have to make a new animation for that. They just stick it at the front of the file. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyways.
So, yeah, I'm not bothered by that either. I like the idea, just briefly, before we go forward, because, this isn't all tangents. I like the idea of Section 31 being involved in the temporal wars, and now that's given me a new direction, maybe for hoping for another Section 31 storyline. So, yeah. So, right. So they figure out what it is. Burnham accepts it immediately. Not like, oh, you explain it to me? Okay, that makes perfect sense. So fine. We're going to function from that piece of information, which he does not do. I mean, he kind of does, like with the Stamets with the tardigrade DNA, but you don't get the impression he would be that quick to accept that information. And of course, we need to find Stamets. Why? Because he lives outside of time because of his tardigrade DNA. Okay, go find Stamets.
Reminded me a bit of in season 2 when Pike learns about the spore drive, and he's just like, okay, well, if you tell me you can move instantaneously across space by using mushrooms, all right. Or something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and I like that, what is it that Rito calls him? Dr. something, Dr. Shiitake. It's Dr.
Yes.
Something like that. It's not Dr. Fungus, but it's a mushroom reference in here. I didn't write it down, did I? But she calls him something like that.
Yeah, I didn't write that down either.
Dr. Shiitake? It's not. It's something way more clever than that. But I just liked that. And how many nicknames has she given him?
All of them.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Bobcat's my favorite.
Bobcat's pretty good.
Speaking of which, I love Reno in this episode.
Oh, I love that she has unzipped her uniform in every single timeline. She is amazingly consistent.
We've talked about this before, that she's the only one that has a special version of that uniform that is unzipped down the middle. Not the one she wears in this episode, but in the normal timeline.
It's got big Mariner energy there, where the sleeves rolled up and the uniform unzipped, and it's wonderful. But
when she fights the the Emerald Chain Soldier, and then she's just like, get a
better helmet.
I love that.
Better helmet.
She calls him Buckethead. Yeah. But, and the thing with her
Yes.
is that she's written so well, and there's so much of Tig Notaro that comes through, because you get this genuineness from both her as a character and as a person, that she got that wit, that humor. She's so funny, but when she needs to turn it to serious, she does, and it's so genuine and heartfelt, because it's only being said when it really needs to be, because her normal MO is much more flip. So when she really does get serious, you listen, and it means a lot. And then I really liked that moment where they connected, and I really hope that at some point down the line that Rainer really does buy her that drink, because I think the two of them together are fantastic.
That would be good.
You bring her bowl of chips and that Vesper Martini ice cold, and it would be fantastic.
Yes, I love it. Well, that brings us to the next jump, where he has to talk his way out of being seen by her in the middle of Osira's attack. And then
he takes the hit to the face,
Stamets.
which is important because she gives him the little handkerchief thing, which then we know after the next jump, you can carry things with you from jump to jump, because he still has it up. And I'm like, that was good writing, because you didn't have to explicitly say it. We saw it happen, and that was smart.
So I noticed the handkerchief because the camera like shows her do it, but like the importance of it was lost on me, and I had actually had on my notes was, how did they bring the holodeck goo back when they changed timelines? So perfect. That answers that question.
Yep, it appears to be what's on them, what they're carrying comes with them. So right, so there's that, and then they jump again. Right, because they don't run into Stamets until after this. So then we get to 3218, when everything's gone to hell because they failed in their mission, and it was all because of the bug, because it took so long for Starfleet to find them and find out what was going on. And we find out that our villains sold the tech to the Breen, and the Breen used it to destroy things.
The Breen used it to Breen. I like that they are now nouns and verbs.
Breen.
Fantastic. Well, what's interesting
might not be the best use, but
the handkerchief comes through on this jump in the beginning, right? And then I noticed right away, like the first thing Rainer does when they are done flitzing in is he spits on the floor, and I was like, okay, first of all, that's disgusting. Second of all, that's realistic, because he just took this huge blow to the face. And third of all, that's very in character, and it is such a stupid little less than a second long thing, but every time I watched it, I noticed it, and I went, ugh, oh, but I liked it because it fit with him really well. And then, I mean, man, this is a hard one to watch, and all the dust and all the destruction, and how creepy Que Sera Sera sounds like distorted through a bulkhead doorway, and how perfectly Zora that was to have that song playing, because we know from all of Zora how much she loves all the classics. She's back in Funny Face and Stormy Weather and all that would be right in her wheelhouse. And she can dream now, so are we going to jump into that big theory that's coming from that?
Sure.
Go for it.
That this is our connection to Calypso that we're getting? That now...
Oh, yeah.
That,
I mean, it's clear. It's obvious that it is.
So Calypso was all a dream? Yes, no? That's why timelines don't line up and details aren't good, and the shuttle is different.
I hadn't thought of that.
And it's Discovery.
The
old
makes
Discovery.
A lot of sense. Yeah.
Because in dreams,
and still,
you take some of the details and you mix up some of it, and time and all that is weird, and Zora's lonely.
Raising the hair on my arm.
Oh, that I like this. I like that a lot, actually.
Yes.
I mean, I was not the only person who thought this immediately. It's all over the place. This is not just my theory.
I had not seen anyone talking about
I heard
this.
it from you, so you get the credit.
Oh, well, thank you. It's not all mine, but I did think it right away. And I feel very conflicted, because I have wanted that connection to Calypso for so long. That is by far my favorite short track. That is a gorgeous piece of short fiction right there. And I wanted there to be some sort of explanation. And if it's all a dream, if that's an explanation, okay, I can resign myself to the fact that at least we have this connection. Do I still want it to be more? Yeah, it kind of feels like, the cop out of a TV show. Oh, that whole last season was a dream. The whole thing was a dream. But if it was, what a beautiful dream
Newhart.
for Zora to have, and how heartbreakingly different that makes it now to watch Calypso, when it was a heartbreaking thing to watch to begin with. But now to think that this was what she created to keep herself, this is her dream. This is her subconscious putting everything she wants in there. Oh, it makes me tear up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I have made no not hidden the fact that Calypso is not my favorite of the short tracks. It stands so outside of everything, and it does have this bit of weird hanging information that just doesn't make sense. But put it in this context, and I like it a little better. Still not one that I'm just going to pop in, to watch.
Well, you have to be in the right mood for that too. And
yeah, it's kind of heavy.
Well, and it's
that kind of is heavy.
Than a lot of Star Trek. I mean, it's flat out going to kick you in the feels, and that's the intention of it, is to kick you in the feels. So if that's not what you're looking for, that's not what you're watching.
This is true. This is true. I love that idea, though.
Yeah, no, that works.
I think it's a decent explanation, and if that is the final connection we get, it might not be what I wanted it to be, but I am okay with that being the end because it makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I hardly ever get what I wanted it to be anyway, so I'm used to that. One more thing I really like from this chunk is, in the Zora vein, is I like that we see things from Zora's perspective a few times in this little jump. And I always think that's interesting to see, like, all the little data bobs she's got around it and what she's focusing on. And it makes her feel like the character she really is, because we're seeing it from her point of view. And that's just, I like that they threw that in there in that little part.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So this is where we get a little bit of it's not really a reveal for the viewer, but it's a reveal for Raynor. Burnham talking about how she didn't feel like she deserved to even be on the ship, much less later, taking it as captain and all of that. And, and then he uses that later. So it was a good thing they had that, 2-moment conversation to convince her of that later. And then they math the math.
Yes, they do. And it makes a really pretty... I like that modern Star Trek makes time travel and time jumps into beautiful graphics all the time. That, they're sine waves, they're conical waves, they're, dispersing waves. It's just, it's fun. I would like all of my higher complex math to come out into pretty shapes, please.
I would probably understand it then. Yeah. Or not probably. I might understand it then. We'll go there.
It can be any shape it wants. I'm not understanding it.
Nor do I really have the desire to, more than like what I can tell from the pretty shape and diagram that gets explained to me because plot exposition. So
this is the first time that I have been watching the show and it occurred to me, geez, I wish they were doing t-shirts for these episodes too.
Oh,
because that would have been
a cool
t-shirt. That would have been the picture on the t-shirt. So maybe they'll do that.
I would love a t-shirt of every episode of Star Trek ever out there. Like, somebody needs to open a store where you can just go and buy a cool looking t-shirt. I mean, people have done enough art for all of them. There's somebody's $1 million idea. I don't need any money. I just want a free t-shirt for the episodes I want.
Free 700 and some odd t-shirts.
Well, I got at least 30. So.
It's more than that.
Every episode.
It's 900.
You did
I
say
think.
every episode.
I
it
did.
Is now, yeah.
Plus movie, okay. I would need a storage unit. I already have a collection.
And a lot of
free selection of.
Yes. I would like a curated selection.
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, so those Lower Decks shirts are actually made by the animation studio that makes Lower Decks, which is why we get them for that. So if they ever do another Star Trek series, we'll probably get it for that show. But
yeah,
I do wonder, like, if they did that for the other shows, I wonder how well they would sell. Whether it would be worth it for Paramount to actually do it.
Well, okay.
I'm guessing probably not.
What is it? Heroes and Villains does T-shirts with Strange New World, because I have one that's the Vulcan tea ceremony from this last season, and they have not, and they've got like the 3 Klingons from Subspace Rhapsody, the 3 ships. They've got not every episode. They've got a lot of Gorn ones. They're really beautiful, and they've got some, and they're obviously enough that they did them for both seasons. So, maybe not every episode, but I think.
Yeah, and JJ Lendl, the artist, has done episode artwork, not for every show, but for a lot of them. And he actually did sell briefly, like, because he never leaves stuff up because he doesn't want to get shut down by Paramount. But he did briefly have a sale where he sold all of his Strange New Worlds episodes on T-shirts. It was like for a weekend as like a special thing. I got the one with Subspace Rhapsody on it.
That's his art is phenomenal. If you haven't looked it up yet, anybody listening to this, go look it up because it will make you so happy. It's so detailed. The one for this episode, did you see it? It's like watches, and it's got Burnham in the middle with like 2 colors, right? And then it's got Raynor in one like clock center, and then it's got Stamets in the other one, and it's Roman numerals. It is gorgeous. I think it was Caleb Dorsch who said he would get it as a tattoo.
So I literally have a JJ Lendl art on my wall right there.
Nice.
It's not Star Trek, actually. It's West Wing. But there's one right there.
Still
above that chair.
Let Bartlett be Bartlett.
Yeah.
Or Bartlett for America. That was it. Yeah.
That's
okay.
cool.
Yeah, it's Bartlett for America. Yep.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That is.
All right, but back to this jump. I mean,
yes,
the conversation between Michael and Raynor is beautiful, like we were saying, and it's I think it's interesting too how it's a very intimate moment that they've come into for Zora. She's very vulnerable, and then they are both very vulnerable in this moment. So that's some nice echoes. But then when they are getting ready to jump, when they realize they should be leaving in about 10 seconds and it's actually working. And I mean, every time before they jump, Michael's face is perfect. Sometimes it's like an eye roll, sometimes it's a sigh, sometimes it's like a gearing herself up kind of thing. and this one, when Zora says, please fix this, make this all better, she's sending them off, and you hear that last note, you can see her face, this steely resolve before this last jump. And because they don't know where they're going to next, they know how long they're going to have, but they don't know when it's going to be. So to see her kind of pulling herself back in from being Michael to being the captain again. And like, we see her do that over and over throughout the series. Like when she thought she saw Book die, and when his ship blew up, and she did that, like she lost it. And then you saw her actually take a breath and pull it together. It's that same kind of thing. It's so in character. And that was a really beautiful little, because all of these expressions before they beam out or flicker out, whatever we're calling that, are seconds, they're fleeting, but they are so in character. And I love that they left them in so we could see that little bit of her steeling herself for whatever it is, because I can only imagine, like, you don't know when you're showing up.
Right. Okay. So then we go
the next jump. They need the holodeck juice, right?
Yeah.
I think no, the next jump is when they actually see, we actually get back to Stamets.
Oh, yeah,
and that's when he has the conversation with Reno, and then it's the next jump, which apparently is around the same time, because we don't get markers on that other than Book being there.
Yeah, it's between season 3 and 4, because it's clearly because Michael has just been made captain is what's described there.
Yeah, as Stamets talks about how he's had to reorient with each jump, and he's been having to live through stuff without messing up the timeline. He gives that whole theoretical thing to Reno, and she's like, "Are you having temporal time? Are you having temporal issues?" And he's like, "No,
the time loop right now, Stamets."
Yeah, that's it.
And she's the only person who could have delivered that, where he would have thought maybe she actually figured it out.
Yeah.
And that's why
I thought for a moment. No. He says he got to see Linus stuck in the replicator again. I want this story.
Why isn't that a short track?
Okay,
make it one.
I wish this had been the time. Like, do you remember when they were talking about how the replicators could only, right before she got kidnapped in season 4, the replicators could only do the hot bananas, and it was Linus who called her, and I was like, oh my god, is this the time it was Linus and the hot bananas and the replicator? But it wasn't. But that's what it made me think of. I'm like, poor Linus, he gets replicator duty a lot.
He's
Well,
Boimler.
Yeah, he's Boimler.
I wonder if it was when it from that time in season 3, right after they had all gotten the personal transports, and Linus kept accidentally beaming places.
Yes, that would be perfect.
I'm sure that's it.
Oh, that would
I'm
be so
sure that was
perfect.
it. Oh, yeah.
I
Okay.
love Linus. Like, he's such a fun.
And in this episode, he's like, red is definitely your
Yes.
color.
Oh,
Yes.
that was a moment.
Yes.
That
her
was a moment.
face there too. She just melts and thanks, Linus. Like, it was not at all what she was expecting.
Mhm.
And it was just perfect. Like, I want to hang out with Linus. He seems like he'd be fun.
Yes. So they combine all the information they have, and then Stamets is like, "Oh, cool! I can build a chronoton stabilizer and tech the tech, and that will fix things."
I like that they had a reason for it had to be Michael going back to her quarters. Like, they're like, "No, the cabins are biometrically sealed," and I was like, "Well, that makes sense." And you don't want people just being able to come in and out and all that. And I loved this moment with her and Book. Like, this was the
was
way
great.
to put in the "we need Book in this episode" moment. Just besides the fact that David Ajala is gorgeous, and like, that was not.
I mean, if you hadn't said it, I would.
Yeah, it was not a bad thing to see him just like hanging out there shirtless. I'm like, yeah, we could do this. But to see the interplay between them, and for Michael to have that moment of being in the good part again, and then again having to shake it off and steel herself and go back, like, man. But it was beautiful, and we got Grudge, and I really liked the moment in there when they're talking about change, and they were saying that change can be hard, and then Book goes, "It's also the only way anything meaningful happens." I'm like, you know what? That's the theme of this episode spelled out right here. And I like that, and I feel like that's a lesson I still work on in my own personal life, and I think that's a lesson that's good for the world. So I love that it was, sometimes people are like, I hate it when it's bonk bonk on the head and it's right there, this is what you're supposed to learn from this, but I think this one felt natural, and I hope it is heard, and I hope people rewatch this scene a lot, because they want the eye candy, then they hear that lesson and it sinks in, because I think that's a good one for the world.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So they make the thing, and then they try there's a jump in the middle here, but it's basically the same time. And we find out that the bug has this shield that just super speeds time around it, so that it's like the thing in Timescape.
That was I thought about Timescape as well, the rotten fruit.
And I'm so glad we didn't get giant fingernails this time like we did in that one. I
also was wondering if we were going to get giant fingernails.
Yeah, icky.
So then they have to fix that. Okay. So then we jump to the past, 2256. Jason Isaacs is apparently not available for cameos. We kind of discussed that already.
The same with Rekha Sharma, apparently, because they also call her by name and say she's not on the ship.
Yeah. I get it. Fine, whatever.
But, I'm beginning to think we are not going to get a Jason Isaacs cameo this season.
I don't think so.
I think that it's more likely that we would somehow get a Jason Isaacs like movie cameo or movie role, or some sort of connection in the Section 31. She's going to go try to find other. I hope so too. And you know what? If he's holding out for a bigger, juicier part than a cameo, and we get that down the line, I will eat all my words.
Yeah,
that I say.
if we get a Prime Lorca movie, I'm down with that too.
And then we can have
even just showing up briefly. Yeah.
Like it could be, Jason Isaacs doesn't age quickly, or at least he has not up to this point. So he could easily play Prime Lorca a couple years before he gets pulled into the Mirror Universe.
He's in the UK, isn't he? I mean, that's probably the reason, a good chunk of the reason.
But I mean, he travels. He's not like
I realize
he's not
geological. Are you gonna?
Because he does other roles.
Yes, but if you're, are you gonna fly over to the US for a day's worth of work? That's what I mean. Like where you're not already doing things. Canada. Fly to North America. Cross the
If they
Atlantic.
give him enough money, he will.
If he's already here for something else,
Yeah, well, they
you
just
add it
canceled this,
on.
so I don't think they have that.
That is fair. Jason Isaacs, I have met Jason Isaacs at multiple conventions here in the United States. The man is not adverse to flying to the US or Canada for a weekend.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm trying to give him an excuse, but if you don't want to, then that's fine.
Well, one of the things I like about this chunk is they say
Yeah.
that it's going to be, about 13 minutes long. It actually is about 13 minutes long. Like all of the jump
I didn't time
that they
it.
have in
Nice.
this episode, I was like, I wonder if they're actually going to keep to that. And they do. Like they're all within probably 10, 15 seconds of being whatever if they tell you how long they're supposed to be there, that's how long they're actually there. Like it's interesting. And when Michael goes, oh, this one was about twice as long as the last one, like it really is. Like that's cool. That's not needed, but that's
I
cool.
like that.
So.
I really like that. I did not make that connection. All right, so they figure out that the way to access the bug is to break the warp bubble, which will allow the temporal thing to disconnect, and they'll be able to touch it without dying. And tech the tech. So Burnham has to go to the bridge, and she runs into Linus. Red is definitely your color. Now, funny line, particularly the way he delivers it.
Yeah,
it's just beautiful. But I think we're also supposed to get a little bit of that's where she should be. She's in command. She's got the red. That's I read it as a kind of a dual. Not that he knows that, but it's just yeah. Which brings me to my nitpick. 2256 Burnham should not recognize that the uniform she has on is Starfleet. Of command.
It looks Starfleet.
Or Captain Pips. Okay,
but
so you can go, that looks Starfleet.
But the captain thing, yes. That, although it has four Pips, so... And that is what Captain is in her time as well.
Yes. Okay.
But assuming that it has to be Captain is wrong. Yeah, I agree.
And red is operations as far as she's concerned.
That's true.
So captain of what? Engineering? That could be any number of things. Scotty was a captain of engineering. So, this is something we have to do a little hand waving, and that's fine. But I had to put it out there.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I fell in exactly between the two of you. I was like, oh yeah, she saw the Delta, and then she realized, uniforms have changed over time, and I'm looking at it's always been 4. Like, it wouldn't have been the biggest jump, but it also wouldn't have been instinctive, and probably not the thing she was paying attention to the most at that moment. Like, that would not have been what I would have been thinking the most, but I'm also not, a savior of the galaxy, so who knows how fast her brain works.
Neither is she yet, but that's,
the first thing I would have done would be investigate the uniforms, but that's just me.
Because you are you, Thad.
You are the uniform guy.
Uh-huh. I was looking at the hairdo.
On a similar vein.
There you go.
Raynor shouldn't have said 23rd century Constitution class to Reese. He should have just said Constitution class.
Yes, you're right. Okay. Well, but he was trying to prove he was from the future, right? Though.
Yeah.
So that's maybe because Burnham had said that they were from the future.
But they did. I don't think she explained that they were from 900 years in the future.
Okay. And they wouldn't think it would be that long because lifespans. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
This is where, as someone who really likes time travel, I'm just like, yeah, it's a time travel thing. Yeah, it's a time travel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I want to say again, I do love this episode.
Yes.
That was just I'm like, wait a second.
Oh,
it took me out of it
to
for a
my
moment.
irk yet, and that's going to be even more nitpicky than this.
Excellent.
Love it.
Excellent.
All right. So I thought this fight with herself, first of all, I absolutely love how much better technology has come since the episode.
Second
the one in the
chances
original
with Riker?
series with
The Enemy Within.
well, yeah, Enemy Within. Thank
Yeah.
you. I was like Mantrap. It's not
I'm
Mantrap.
Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Captain
technology
Kirk.
has improved greatly since the Mantrap or the Enemy Within. I'm gonna do that again. Okay.
Well, I mean, it
which,
has also
is an
improved
obvious.
since the Mantrap.
It has. An obvious thing to say, but still fantastic. And yes, second chances and the one with Picard from season 2 and all of that.
And Star Trek 6.
Brothers.
Yeah,
I mean, we can keep
yeah.
going. They meet themselves a lot.
Yes, yeah.
Is the one the fight itself
They did a nice
doesn't
job of
bother
it.
me when she's when
Mhm.
when now Michael is holding past Michael on the floor after she nerve pinches her. I can see the outline of her head there, and like to the point where
Oh, I
the
didn't
first time I looked
catch
at it,
that.
I was like, "Ooh, that's a green screen." And it's not only when you can obviously see both their faces when they're doing the over the shoulder with the dreads in the way of the face. That's perfection, and it's not very long. But I noticed it and noticed that I had only noticed it for that short bit, so that meant it was so much better than it had used to be because
That's
you
good.
used to notice the whole time, and now I only saw it in that one bit. And I like this. I mean, here's the Crisis Point reference, right? Where you're fighting yourself and it's therapeutic. And I love seeing how her fight style evolved and the behind the scenes on this one. If you watch the Ready Room or the little clip on Paramount Plus's YouTube, is worth it. It is cool to see how they did this and they
I'll have
talked
to
to the
go
stunt
in.
double and all that. Like it was well thought out. And wow, like I love Vulcan martial arts. Like I could never do it, but it's so how they fight. They're so precise but strong, and I really I like that, and that's what you get through this whole fight: the precision and the strength of it. But man, she missed the opportunity to make the Faith of the Heart joke when she told her, "Oh, will be a long road," and I was like, oh! And then she didn't say it. And I was like,
I didn't even go there.
That was my gut
I
punch
love it.
right there.
Okay.
I was like, are they going to? I think they're not.
That would have been good,
wouldn't it?
That would have been good,
wouldn't it? Even if she would have said it's a long road getting from here to there instead of there to here, I would have taken it. But
would have been okay.
Yeah.
Well, they only do so much.
I know.
I love how when you get the scenes where they're talking to each other in the turbo lift and the way she's holding herself in both times. The 2256 Burnham is tensed. She's kind of bent over a little bit. She's ready for a fight.
She
the
looks more like
32nd
Mirror
century
Burnham.
is just yes.
That's what I thought. I'm like,
Ooh,
wow, you can see how Burnham and Mirror Burnham are connected in that moment.
Yep. And it's the she hasn't dealt with her trauma yet. Getting back to what I was talking about with Raynor. So yeah, but I just wonderfully acted again. All of these people need Emmys. They're not going to get them, but they all need them.
Yeah. And the face acting again on both ends of that conversation, it's incredible. Well, so this pairing is awesome. And then this is the same jump where we have Stamets and Raynor in engineering having their little back and forth. And that pairing is amazing. Like that's what's really nice about this last jump is the back and forth and those parallel stories and how they come together. And I really liked we talked about this a little bit before about how this is where Raynor and Stamets really connect for the first time, and they're talking about being old dogs, and he calls him Paul, and they call each other out, and I really like that. And this is where you can see that Raynor might be a jerk, but he was probably a really good captain. He was a different captain. But he was probably a really good captain. And what I liked the most and what resonated with me here, something that really connected to me in my real life, is what he does next. He says, how can I help right now? And that is like when I jump into a situation, whether it be at school, in my personal life with my family or whatever, that's the question I'm asking, because if I'm not in charge of it, I want to know, what do you want me to do? How can I help right now? And that is the sign of somebody who is both a good leader and a good collaborator. And that was a moment for me right there, that was the question he asked.
I love that, because it's you that's the question you want to hear on the other side of it too.
Exactly.
Even if your answer to it is just leave,
right?
Which sometimes it is, depending on the situation. But that was fantastic, and it gave him some depth that I didn't feel for him before. or feel with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
So
he's not
this-
just a
good.
jerk to be a jerk. Like he's developed this way of being that works for him, but he's realizing it's not here, and he's on fairly equal footing right now. Like they are two men trapped outside of time, trying to do something together. They are both incredibly smart, good at what they do, and stuck in a bad situation. So, yeah, there's rank here, but right now they're just two men trying to get through this.
Yeah.
Two old dogs.
Mm-hmm. And I do love how Stamets clears engineering.
Yeah.
I'm grumpy.
Very
I need to be
grumpy.
alone. Everybody leave now.
Yeah, and that
It
was
was faster.
than the spore breach. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny.
Had more surly pre-tardigrade DNA. Yes. So they're working on that, and then Burnham goes to the bridge and has to, explain everything. And I love when they get the sensors and they're like, "Where's Michael Burnham? There are two Michael Burnhams.
she's
One is
like,
unconscious. She's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I just nerve pinched her.
her.
It's okay."
Yeah.
That there was a that felt like a touch of Mariner too.
Yes.
With that.
Mhm.
Yes.
The fighting yourself and then I've knocked myself out, but it's okay.
Yeah. I would love to see Mariner and Burnham have some sort of interaction somewhere because
Oh my God.
wow, that would be
yes.
awesome. But and I also
Yes.
have to point out in this scene, like I'm not surprised that Ariam would sacrifice herself. I wouldn't think anybody else would be surprised
all.
about that. But besides that moment, I loved all the characters that seemed like their previous characters. Like they really went back and inhabited them. I love that Tilly called out her hair and she was like, I love that. Like she's always commenting on the hair, and it's just that's such a Tilly thing. And again, a nice shout out for people. Hey, pay attention. The hair people worked overtime in this episode. Like Detmer's hair was different and lighter and shorter. Oo had her old braids. Like I said, even the men had the gel or the combing that they used to have. It was really nice to see that level. And I liked that this was all of our bridge crew that people complain we don't know them, they're secondary characters, blah, blah, blah. This was a moment for all of them to shine and be that cohesive mass, and it was really nice.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a great scene. I love because they all act exactly the way you would expect them to because they're not going to trust her. Why should they?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can't forget this is in the middle of the Klingon War.
Yeah.
So it's not just, we're a random day on a Starfleet vessel where somebody shows up. This is in the middle of a war. So there's added tension.
Plus, none of them actually trust Michael Burnham regardless at this point.
Nor should they.
Yeah.
As far as they're concerned. Yeah.
Tilly thinks she's going to knife her in her sleep for snoring, which was the best callback, too.
Love that.
Oh, that was a tiny little meta callback right there, too. And it was great.
Yeah.
But she gets it done, like Stamets always says, right? She gets it done. She always does.
So she gets that worked out. They're almost about to fix it. And then, of course, 23rd Century Burnham comes in and stops everything. And Raynor has to do basically what Burnham did and convince them that they know each other and he understands. And they really are there to do good and not evil, I guess you could say.
Well, and brave of him, he walked right up to that phaser, like,
oh my God,
his
yes.
chest. Like that was a move.
That was, I can caveat that with he knew that if the time jumped again, he would probably come back if it killed him, but he doesn't know that for sure.
Well, he still has his busted
so-
lip when he went from one place to another, so
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Okay.
I don't know.
And we
I
don't
like
know what
that-
happened to Stamets in the place where they were dead, so yeah.
Well, maybe because he was.
Well,
wasn't he-
Stamets
I know.
doesn't carry things over from timeline to timeline because you notice his outfit changes.
Yeah.
He
so
can't.
Stamets
Yeah.
is inhabiting the Stamets of that timeline.
Right.
Maybe
I
his
was making a bad
consciousness
joke about when we were asking where he was at when they were all dead. Yeah. Anyway.
consciousness was hanging out in the induced coma, right?
There you go.
But it was a great scene. And okay, so here's where I have to throw out my big theory. Here's where my screenshots
Yes,
come in.
please.
Okay. So, and when you guys put this out, I will put it out on, you can use these screenshots, put them out there.
Sure.
I can put them out there, whatever.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I don't know if this is true. I'll start with this. I don't know if it looks like this to anybody else. I've floated it past a couple people, and I've had someone go, ooh, and someone go, no. Okay, so timestamp of this episode, 45:47. Raynor's going to put the little killer on the bug, right? He's going to get his old hand. So there are a few screenshots in there with the device and Raynor on top of the bug. And I swear to you, the very first time I saw it, I went, oh, that's the Guardian of Forever. And I looked at it, and the shape of it looks like the kind of almost ovular Guardian of Forever with like the cave side and all that. And I thought back to Terra Firma when
Oh, it totally does.
When Carl said he hit himself, the Guardian hit itself because it was the factions of the Temporal Cold War were trying to weaponize him, right? So what if these time bugs are the Krenim trying to use the Guardian to weaponize the randomization of time in the time loop? Because I am sorry, I saw that and I went, oh, that's the Guardian. Oh my God, it's time technology, right? Because it's a time bug. And when you look at, especially there are 3 screenshots, and I went, okay, maybe I'm crazy. They didn't say anything about it. They didn't do anything, but this is time travel. This is the Guardian, right? And I went back then the second time. I took the screenshots, some of them with like the display information and everything. They're not high quality, but I'm sorry. I think that's the Guardian. I think that the Krenim weaponized the Guardian of Forever to make time bugs. And this was because it's not all Raynor's hand. Raynor's hand is cupped around when you're looking at it the right side. And then the left side is like the little device thing. But I'm sorry, if it's a coincidence, it's a really lucky, lovely coincidence because that looks like the Guardian of Forever.
Okay, so what I think is it looks like it, and I think they may have even thought, hey, this would be a cool little Easter egg, but I don't necessarily think that it is actually the manifestation of the Guardian of Forever in this instance.
Yeah.
Probably not.
That's where I would go with
but
that.
I still like it, and it was a beautiful coincidence. And this is now my official headcanon, and I'm keeping the screenshots forever because it really was. It was an instant reaction from me. I went, oh my God, the Guardian. But that's because I'm the kind of nerd I am, so.
Fair enough. We all have our headcanon that we stick to.
There we go. I still think the Gorn are actually augments, and that's why we have all these new Gorn things that we don't have later on. So I'll go with that too.
That's really cool, though. Because the way his hand kind of just.
Well, and I was like, this can't just be me. Somebody else noticed this, right? So I went to all the usual suspects, and I'm like looking at, and nobody else has. So I don't know. I'm probably just nuts, or looking for connections that are with the temporal wars that aren't really there.
Sure, you're not.
But I still think it looks like it, and after multiple rewatchings, it still stands out to me, and it's long enough that I don't know. We'll see. I like my theory. It's out there in the universe now.
Yeah, that works. All right, so they get back home, and they have only lost 6 hours, and they acknowledge the value of each other's way of doing things. And I thought there was a bit of an analogy here.
Apologizes on the bridge, which I thought was nice too.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a good touch. Yeah.
Well, and I like how Burnham admits she's still stubborn in just in a different way. Like that's a big admission, and I like it. She makes that face that Book called her 11 face, where like she does the little furrow and she gets the 11 on her eyes. I look for that all the time now because one of my daughters does that, and I call her 11 when she's doing it to break her out of it because of that face on Michael Burnham. So I appreciated that the change in the introspection wasn't just for Raynor. It was for both of them. That was such a nice moment. And I agree with you 100% that the fact that it became a public thing was a very important piece of this resolution.
Yeah.
However, my irk comes in the last scene.
Oh,
okay.
Yes, by all means.
Okay, so anyone else, if anyone's ever listened to me anywhere else, you know I also love Star Trek music, right? I really like the Discovery Season 4 soundtrack. Like, it is beautiful. One of my favorite pieces is called Book Talking the 10C / Coming Home. They played the exact piece of music for the last scene of this one. It is the exact same track. It's not an ode to. It's not a theme coming back. It is the exact piece of music, and I know that because I've listened to it a bazillion times. It is one of my favorite pieces of Trek music. I had just been listening to it the night before doing dishes, and they cut it right before it goes into the da 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 da. That's where it should have gone if Burnham had 3 more seconds, right? And I love Star Trek music, and I love Discovery music. I think it is massively underrated in the fandom as being complex and gorgeous, and the cello work alone deserves accolades. So when they put the exact same piece of music, I felt cheated. Like, this is my last season of Discovery. I want as much original Discovery music as I can possibly get.
I mean,
you reused one of the most beautiful pieces.
A lot, though.
Yes, but this was a long chunk. This was like, it's like how they reused Hugh's log to be the end credits music. Like, it's beautiful, and I love it, and I love it in both places, and it deserves to be played more than once so people who aren't obsessively listening like me hear that. But I was just selfishly bummed because this is a big moment where we could have had a lovely thing to come out on the season 5 soundtrack that will not be there because we already have it, and I just want more Discovery music.
Well, my Discovery soundtrack complaint will still be that we still do not have anywhere on any of the albums the Spore Jump track from season 1 and 2.
I will take that as yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I hope at some point when there is a fallow period, which hopefully will be a very long time from now, that they're like, what else can we do? Oh, let's release every piece of soundtrack and music that we have that has never been released.
Like they did. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that once Discovery is off the air, then maybe La La Land Records will work out a deal.
I hope so too.
For that.
I very much hope so too.
But in the meantime, hopefully we'll get some more exciting music in the next, 6 episodes.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
I'm sure when the soundtrack comes out, I will not miss it. It just hit me because that was like the last moment. And the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, they used the song. They didn't even use the whole thing. Like, that would have been a perfect time to have the little like call there. But that's just me. And it's like I said, a purely selfish thing, just because I want more music from Discovery.
All right. That's not the worst thing.
No. This was a fun episode. Obviously, we've talked about it for twice as long as the episode is.
Yeah, we're good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
All right. Well, any other final thoughts on the episode?
I can see this becoming a comfort food episode for me for Discovery.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I knew right away. I mean, it's been for me, it has been since Thursday. We're recording this on Saturday. I've watched it 4 times.
Yeah.
Now
I watched the screener 5 times.
Oh, that's cool.
So
yeah, you got me beat there. All right. Well then, as I started last week, Abby, you got any predictions for this final season?
Oh, I predict that Michael and Book will find their way back to each other, whether one way or the other.
I like that.
But I really hope they continue it being the adult type of relationship where they acknowledge the fact that they hurt each other pretty badly and they need some time, space. And I hope it continues. I really like that. But I think by the end, they will be back together. I think there is going to be friction between Maul and Locke when they realize they both don't have the same level of commitment to this. And that's going to be where, in the end, they end up Discovery. One of them is going to end up doing something that lets Discovery get ahead because they're having a fight between each other. I have a hope that Fred gets reactivated. I don't know that is a prediction, but it is a hope very much. And I think that by the time this is done, hearing how all the actors are talking about the epilogue and everything, I think it is going to feel like a finished bite. And maybe not the entire meal, because like I said, we are all hoping for more of these stories, but I feel like it's going to feel like it had a good conclusion. It wrapped up. I think that the people who write this series and who take care of these characters are deliberate and careful and will give them the endings that they deserve. And I also predict somebody that we know by name and care about at least a bit is probably going to bite it. And it might be Rayner.
Yeah. It would make sense if it were Rayner. Yeah.
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 Or Admiral Vance.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
I hope it's not I hope it's not either one of them.
Yeah. That would be tough because he's got young kids.
As long as it's not
we
Saru.
Don't usually.
It cannot be Saru.
Or yes. No.
It cannot be Saru. I am not okay with that.
I thought that was going to happen. Nope.
Yeah, no.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us today, Abby. Where can listeners find you online? And what current and upcoming work would you like to mention?
So, best place to find me is still Twitter or X or whatever you're calling it. I am at Abby M. Sommer. That's SOMMER. And I'm there the most. I have a little bit on Blue Sky. That's about it. I'm trying. I say that forever, but maybe this summer when there's not school, I will get more active on the places. I don't have the bandwidth. But if you're looking for listening to me more talking about Star Trek, I have a podcast called First Flight Pod, and it is hosted by myself and the lovely Chris, and we are going through every single episode of Enterprise in succession and discussing them in depth and having a great deal of fun and laughs and giggles. We reference Thad more times than I can count, and he likes to give us running jokes that involve a lot of balls, which is awesome. And you can find us on all of the places you find your podcasts and on YouTube under the Tricorder Transmissions Network. And all of those are at First Flight Pod. And those are more active on Blue Sky and Facebook and Instagram and all those other socials as well. And we just started season 3. Our first episode, the Zindi, just dropped days ago. So if you are into season 3, do a year-long rewatch with us.
Season 3 is my favorite season of Enterprise.
Well, there you go. I'm 100% sure you'll be called out at some point again in the season.
All right. Well, Thad, where can people find you when you're not expressing your disappointment about not having been able to squish the time bug?
Oh, that was a good one.
It was a good one.
Best place to find me is also still on Twitter. That's where I'm most active. I do also have a presence on most of the other socials. You can find me in just about everywhere at Tyrannicus. That's TYRANICUS. You can also hear me on the podcast I do with my friend Carl called License to Spiel. That's license spelled with a C, like the British do it. We started out talking about the James Bond movies and have progressed to talking about other movies. Chrissie, where can people find you when you're not telling people to get better helmets?
You need better helmets. Very important.
They gotta be MIPS approved, otherwise it's not worth it.
Yeah. Wait, they gotta be what?
Isn't it MIPS? Multiple Impact Protection?
Oh, okay. I didn't hear you right. Never mind.
Like, that's like the rule, like, that's the kind of bike helmet you want, because otherwise you're... Yeah.
Brain could get scrambled.
Yeah, I thought you said RIPS, and I was like, what's RIPS? And I didn't know what that was, so okay. Right. In addition to here in Infinite Diversity, you can find me on History with the Szilagys here on the BQN. That is that twice weekly history short podcast I do with my fellow historian partner Jason. That will be back soon. I'm also happy to chat about our shows in the BQN Collective on Facebook and in our wonderfully active Discord that we have. I'm actually learning how to use Discord finally, even though I've had it for years. This has given me a reason to actually learn how to use it properly. And I'm on the usual socials at The Goddess Livia, that's TheGoddessLivia, where you can see my opinions about Star Trek history and leftist politics.
Don't forget all of our other great shows on BQN. Here's Chrissie from the past to tell you all about them.
What else can you listen to on the BQN? Replicate yourself a mug of hot chocolate and join Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin as they discuss everything and anything in the Star Trek universe on All Good Things. Boost yourself with an energy drink and join Davey on YouTube and Twitch for reviews and live streams of classic, cheap, and sometimes more recent video games on Bargain Bin Gamer. Brew yourself a pot of coffee and join Jeremiah to discuss Star Trek Voyager on The Captain's Couch. Mix your favorite cocktail and join Mark and Matt at Cinema Z to discuss the films you probably missed but should definitely check out. Pour a cup of tea, Earl Grey, hot, and listen to Stephen and Keith as they discuss the next generation of Trek on Galaxy Class. Get yourself something caffeinated and learn an interesting bit of history with Chrissie and Jason on History with the Szilagys. Have a bowl of Flomeek soup and join Thad and Chrissie and a guest to discuss new episodes of Star Trek as they are released on Infinite Diversity. Have something to sharpen your mind and put your Trek knowledge to the test with the Treksperts quiz. Take a bite out of something that didn't seem edible and join Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley covering all things in New Trek, including that show that is Trek in all but name, The Orville, on Union Federation. Get your Sunday brunch ready for The View Screen, a live weekly talk show hosted by Kelvin and Amy with featured guests talking about all things Trek. Pour a glass of wine and spill some tea with Christos while he discusses current Trek news and events and explores the world of fandom via guest interviews, all with an LGBTQIA+ perspective on What's the Tea, Bev? And Patreon members get to pass around that green bottle of Aldebaran whiskey once a month on the round table, and they can listen to It's Green with Mark White and Amy's Math Moments. And thank you so very much for tuning in to Infinite Diversity. Thank you to Zach Tripp for the wonderful theme music and Mark White for the awesome show art. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast player, and don't forget to rate and review us there as well.
If you want to reach out, you can find the network on Twitter and Blue Sky at BQN Podcast, or our show specifically at IDIC Podcast. You can also talk about any and all of the BQN podcasts in our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, and our Discord. When you next hear from us, we'll be talking about episode 5 of the final season of Discovery, Mirrors. Until then, peace and long life.